make sure that you understand what medical school is about. It's not about, I have a 3.95 GPA, I can get a 5.15 plus on my MCAT because I'm a good test taker. It's about wanting to take care of patients. Welcome to the OldPreMeds podcast. My name is Dr. Ryan Gray, your host here every week, where I take your non-traditional questions, now from the Pre-Med Hangout, not from Pre-Med Forums anymore. Pay attention to that. We take your questions, your non-traditional pre-med questions, and answer them here on the podcast for all to learn. Before we jump into today's session, though, I want to talk about the MCAT Minute, brought to you by Blueprint MCAT. If you are a non-traditional student, shocker, you're listening to this podcast, you probably are. One of the hardest things to do is try to figure out when to take the MCAT. It's a very common question that we get on all of our Q&A platforms. And the ideal situation is to work backwards. If you want to start medical school in 2025, you're going to apply in 2024. Ideally, you're taking the MCAT there January to April 2024, about a year and a half before you plan on starting medical school, which means about 2 years before that, about 2 years before you're starting medical school is when you are planning to start prepping for the MCAT. Go to blueprintmcat.com, sign up for a free account to help you start prepping today. We have a great question from a law student who wants to now go to medical school. Our student asks today, I'm currently in my second year of law school and will graduate next year at the age of 24. I am in the top 5% of my class. However, I do not want to practice law because I genuinely hate reading/writing, and I derive no satisfaction from the work. I was young and dumb when I applied and entered law school. I was a biology major in undergrad and graduated with a 3.95 GPA. If I take my MCAT right after law school, study for like 4 to 5 months, and do really well, 5.15 plus, I'm a good test taker and I understand science. What are my chances of getting accepted into medical school without any clinical experience? Also, what are my chances of receiving a merit-based scholarship if I do get accepted? Any advice would help. I'm currently enduring a lot of stress since I am considering this career change while still in law school. All right, so the best thing that this student can do is, number one, self-reflect, which it sounds like they have done already. I was young and dumb. I applied to law school. I don't actually like the work. I don't derive any passion in it or excitement in it or whatever the word satisfaction that they used. The biggest thing that they can do is take a step back. Now, you were young and dumb once. You're still young. Don't be dumb again. Make sure that you understand what medical school is about. It's not about, I have a 3.95 GPA, I can get a 5.15 plus on my MCAT because I'm a good test taker. It's about wanting to take care of patients. So what are your chances of being accepted without clinical experience? It's possible, but it's not probable. And so you really, really, really have to make sure you get some clinical experience for yourself. You've made mistake number one. Don't make mistake number two and go into this process unaware of what your future looks like. That's the only advice that I can give you. Don't make the same mistake twice. So as you go through this process, number one, do you need to finish law school? That's the first question. If you're a second year, you're in your second year, do you really need to pay another year's tuition to finish law school if that's not what you want to do? Now, will having a JD potentially help you as a medical, as a physician? Potentially, depending on what your career aspirations are. Potentially. That doesn't mean you need it. So that's the first question. Do I press pause on my law school right now? And maybe don't quit, but just press pause. And go talk to the school and say, hey, I'm having some second doubts or some second thoughts here. And I want to make sure that I'm doing the right thing for me. Can I take a leave of absence? See if the school will allow you to take a leave of absence. During that leave of absence, while you don't have any responsibilities outside of potentially working to pay bills and stuff, You can then go get some clinical experience. You can go shadow, go around physicians to make sure that this is the life that you want. And if it's not the life that you want, great. You've made that decision before going down this path of getting into medical school and getting more into debt and making some wrong decisions. So see what you can do immediately to press pause on this career that you don't want to do, and then see about testing this hypothesis for a career that maybe you do want to do. That is what I would recommend you do immediately. That's the first thing. After that, go test this hypothesis. Let's say you love your clinical experience. You love being around patients. You love being in a clinical setting. You love shadowing. Let's say all of that's great. The grades are there already. You've done well in law school. You did well in undergrad. You're a good test taker. Let's say you do well on the MCAT. You've got the clinical experience because you're testing this hypothesis. Then yeah, getting into medical school shouldn't be that hard of a problem if you've explored this, if you've reflected on it enough, if you write a good enough personal statement, extracurricular activities, all of those good things. All of those things are important. In terms of scholarships, that is going to be highly variable depending on the schools that you get into, the financial aid that they are able to offer. That's going to be a school by school dependent thing. And you just have to play it and see what happens. I don't think you should play the game of, I'll only go to med school if it's paid for. I'll only apply to schools that will pay for my medical school. I think that will severely limit you. And you're putting, I understand, right? You're putting the finances before everything else so that potentially you end up in a career because maybe you don't go down the med school route just because of the finances. You end up in a career where you're not happy anyway. So I think you need to think about finances, yes, but also don't put as much weight into it that it prevents you from doing this thing that potentially you're going to love, and it's going to be life-changing in terms of just who you are and what you do in this world and the impact that you make on those people around you. I think I answered the question for you. Good luck on your journey from law school to med school. I hope you make all of the right decisions for you, because ultimately that is the most important decision, and the most important variable is what is right for you. That's what I want everyone thinking about as they go through this journey. I hope this was helpful. Again, for you, if you're listening to this and you want your question asked or answered here on this podcast, then go to premedhangout.com. Use the hashtag OPM question. Again, that's OPM for Old Pre-Meds, OPM question in the Pre-Med Hangout, and we'll hopefully get to your question and answer it here on this podcast. Also, don't forget to go check out our sponsor, Blueprint MCAT. Go sign up for a free account. This is perfect for a law school turns med student or pre-med to start your MCAT prep. Go get a free Blueprint MCAT account. Go to their study planner tool, which is free, with that free account, and go lay out what that will look like leading up to your MCAT. I hope this was helpful. Have a great day. We'll see you next time here on the Old Pre-Meds podcast.